Last time, we talked about how the mind protects its own story, how cognitive dissonance and the sunk cost fallacy work together to keep someone reasoning their way into staying. But reasoning isn't the only thing keeping them there. There's a second force at work, and this one has nothing to do with logic at all. It doesn't live in the part of the brain that thinks. It lives in the part that feels reward. Here's how it works. In 1957, the same year Festinger published his work on dissonance, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner, working with his colleague Charles Furster, published a study that would become one of the most replicated findings in behavioral science. They tested different patterns of reward, and they measured one very specific thing: which pattern made a behavior hardest to stop. Even after the reward disappeared completely, the answer wasn't constant reward. It was unpredictable reward. Skinner called it a variable ratio schedule. Reinforcement delivered after an inconsistent, unpredictable number of responses. You already know this pattern. It's the exact mechanism behind a slot machine. A machine that pays out every single time gets boring fast. Nobody keeps playing that. But a machine that pays out on no fixed schedule, sometimes the third pull, sometimes the 300th, keeps people playing far longer. Because the brain can never be sure the next pull isn't the one. Now hold that idea, and look at what a toxic relationship pattern actually looks like from the outside. Criticism, coldness, distance, and then, unpredictably, warmth. A good day, an apology, a moment that feels exactly like the relationship they fell for in the beginning. That moment isn't scheduled. It isn't earned in any consistent way. It just appears. And that unpredictability is precisely what makes it so hard to walk away from. This is where the term trauma bonding comes from. First named by therapist Patrick Carnes, to describe the attachment that forms specifically through cycles of intensity, withdrawal, and unpredictable relief. Here's the part people get wrong. It isn't that the good moments are fake. Often, they're completely genuine. But genuine or not, when they arrive on an unpredictable schedule, inside a painful pattern, they function exactly like a slot machine payout, and the brain responds accordingly, chasing the next unpredictable reward, instead of registering the pattern as a whole. This is a behavioral mechanism, not a cognitive one. It doesn't route through the part of the brain that does IQ tests, or negotiates a salary, or wins an argument at work. It routes through the same reward circuitry that governs gambling, which is why someone can sit in a therapist's chair, describe their relationship with total clarity, correctly diagnose every unhealthy pattern in it, and still go home, and still stay. Insight and conditioning live in different parts of the brain, and insight alone doesn't switch conditioning off. This is also why the wake-up moment rarely comes from one huge event. It usually comes from something much smaller. A quiet moment. A question someone finally lets themselves ask. If nothing changes, would I still choose this 5 years from now? That question matters because it removes the fantasy of future change. It forces the mind to look at reality as it currently is, not as it could be, not as it once was. And once someone asks that question honestly, the story the reward system has been running starts to lose its grip. Not instantly, but it starts. Because here's the thing about intermittent reinforcement. It doesn't require someone to be naive, or weak, or unaware. It works on everyone the same way. Slot machines don't check whether the person pulling the lever has a doctorate. Neither does this. So the real shift isn't learning to think harder about the relationship. Thinking is what the dissonance mechanism already hijacked. The real shift is recognizing which system is actually running the decision. The reasoning one or the reward one. Because once someone can see the mechanism clearly, they stop asking, "Why can't I just leave?" and start asking a better question. What is this pattern actually built on? And is it something real? Or is it something my brain has simply been trained to chase? That question is where the real change begins. And it's also where we're headed next. Because understanding the mechanism is only the first step. The next question is what it actually takes to interrupt it. So far, we've looked at two forces working underneath the surface. The mind that reasons its way into staying, and the reward system that keeps chasing an unpredictable moment of relief. Both of them are real. Both of them are well documented. And neither one requires someone to be weak, or naive, or unaware. But understanding a mechanism is not the same as being free of it. So the real question left is this. What actually changes once someone sees it clearly? Here's where it starts. Most people, while they're still inside a relationship like this, keep asking the same question over and over. How can I fix this? It sounds like the responsible question, the mature one, the one a thoughtful person is supposed to ask. But notice what it assumes. It assumes the answer is hidden somewhere, waiting to be found, which means the search never really ends. One more conversation, one more chance, one more explanation. There's a different question underneath it, a harder one. Not, how can I fix this? But, what is this actually showing me? That question doesn't search for a hidden answer. It just asks what's already visible. What keeps repeating? How do I feel most of the time? Am I becoming more myself or less myself? This is where a very specific skill starts to matter. A skill that intelligent people are usually excellent at in every other part of life, and strangely bad at here. Pattern recognition. One argument can be explained. One bad day can happen to anyone. One mistake can be forgiven completely. But repeated behavior is not the same as an isolated event. And that's easy to say, and surprisingly hard to actually apply to your own life. They were just stressed. They didn't mean it. They apologized. All of that might even be true. But there's a deeper question underneath every one of those sentences. Did the pattern change? Because an apology without change creates a cycle. A promise without action creates confusion. And words without consistent behavior create false hope, over and over. The mind naturally focuses on moments. Clarity comes from focusing on patterns instead. There's another cost that rarely gets talked about, and it matters just as much as the mechanism itself. Over time, a person in this situation slowly stops trusting their own perception. Am I overreacting? Am I asking for too much? Maybe I'm the problem. That erosion doesn't happen all at once. It happens one small moment at a time. Every time a real feeling gets explained away, in favor of understanding the other person instead, and rebuilding that trust. Rebuilding trust in your own perception doesn't start with a big decision. It starts with something much smaller. Letting a feeling exist, without immediately explaining why the other person behaved that way. This hurts me. Just that. Nothing else attached to it yet. Now, here's the part that's rarely said out loud, and it's important. Leaving isn't only difficult because of the other person. It's difficult because of what has to be grieved along with it. Not just the relationship. The future that was built around it. a version of the life that was imagined, a version of the person you hoped they'd become. And letting go means accepting something quietly painful. That future may never have existed at all. That's a real loss, not an imagined one, which is exactly why leaving can hurt, even when the relationship itself was unhealthy. You're not only losing a person, you're releasing a possibility. And there's one more thing worth naming, because it surprises almost everyone who goes through it. After leaving instability behind, peace can feel strange. Someone who has spent a long stretch of time inside emotional highs and lows can genuinely mistake calm for emptiness. Why does this feel boring? Why do I miss the intensity? That reaction isn't a sign something is wrong. It's a sign the nervous system had adjusted to instability as its normal setting. And normal, once it shifts, can feel unfamiliar for a while before it feels comfortable. So what does all of this actually add up to? Not that intelligence failed anyone. Not that seeing clearly was ever the missing piece. The final shift isn't about becoming someone who never gets hurt. It's about becoming someone who listens when something quiet inside them finally says, "This is costing me too much." Understanding someone deeply does not mean you're responsible for saving them. And recognizing a pattern does not mean you failed by taking time to see it. The mechanisms were real. The reasoning brain and the reward system underneath it both do exactly what they were built to do. But once someone can name what's actually happening, they stop asking what's wrong with them. And they start asking a better question instead. What would it look like to choose myself? That question is where healing actually begins.